and just a minute before. Okay.
Cool.
All right. So, welcome back to the Black and Raw podcast. I'm your host, Tino Kudatondo Ivanzabaya. I'm not going to repeat that. Here's a podcast that's creating the dialogue and the space for Black men to be their most authentic selves. I'm here with probably my most regular occurring guest.
Probably your most regular guest. Yeah.
Taku, welcome.
Thank you, friend of the podcast.
Friend of the pod.
Going strong. Yeah.
So, I wanted to touch on Black history because in the UK it's Black History Month.
Right.
Not as we're recording this, but when this will come out, it will be Black History Month. When I thought, okay, what do I want to do for Black History Month? What do I want to talk about? And then I started to think about actually what does Black History Month even mean for me?
Right.
Like I came here when I was very young, identify as Zimbabwean and British. But I remember when I was learning about British history, it made me really angry about Britain for a point. Probably still a little bit there, just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just uncover a bit more about Zimbabwean history, but then also how that relates with British history, Black history as a whole. And so my fellow expert in Zimbabwean history over here. He's a history buff. He knows a lot.
I'm a history buff, a history nerd, but I'm not a historian. So maybe a lot of this will be anecdotal and we'll just be discussing what I know. But yeah, I think I'll pretty much help you gain a good picture of it. Yeah.
So I guess I want to maybe touch on Zimbabwean history pre-colonialization, because I think that is something that maybe not a lot of people know. And I know there might be people watching this that like Nigerian and Ghanaian and from other histories, but we're Zimbabwean, so we're going to talk about Zimbabwean history. Maybe next year, any Ghanaians, Nigerians, come along.
West African history.
Yeah, West African, come talk, bro. I'm more than welcome. We'll do it again. But for now, Zimbabwean history. So we'll come back. But yeah, from your perspective, I guess, what is your understanding of pre-colonial Zimbabwe?
Well, I guess the furthest back you can go is so the first settlers into what's now Zimbabwe were a group of people called the Khoisan. The Khoisan they were like hunter-gatherers. They were like Stone Age hunter-gatherers. What pretty much exists from them now are like the rock paintings, very famous rock paintings in Matopos, these geological rock formations. And so those people were in Zimbabwe for like thousands of years. And they were...
Are those all the balancing rocks that are...
Yeah, so if you go to the balancing rocks...
I've got a tattoo of here.
Yeah, right there. So the people who drew on the balancing rocks were called the Khoisan people.
Okay.
And so what happens after that, maybe around 1000 AD, is what's called the Bantu expansion. So the Bantu people are basically the majority of what's now sub-Saharan Africa, or Central and Southern Africa. So that's our ancestors. So they came from modern-day Cameroon and spread out into the rest of Southern Africa. And so the Khoisan people who were there, because the Bantu came during sort of the Iron Age, they had slightly more advanced technology than these Stone Age hunter-gatherers.
So they just sort of
and
wiped
so there
out.
were, well, yeah. There's a word for that's used today, which, I'm not going to say it, but yeah.
Israel? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
that's
so they pretty much got wiped out and assimilated. There's still very small pockets of Khoisan people in Botswana, parts of southwestern Zimbabwe, parts of South Africa, but yeah, they pretty much like what happened to the Native Americans is what happened to them. So, and so within that Bantu expansion, the people who then settled in Zimbabwe are the ancestors of what's now the Shona people. And so over time, those Shona people developed a stone building and architecture which became Great Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Which are actually the largest stone the largest construction ruins in sub-Saharan Africa outside of Egypt.
Wow.
To this day. So it was a pretty impressive
feat
and empire. And they found in those ruins, they were like trading with the Arabs.
So we were just saying about Mugabe, the Marxists, and how that was all sort of starting to form.
Yeah. So let's just the key figures in this issue are Ian Smith, who is the prime minister and leader of that party.
Yeah.
Joshua Nkomo, who is sort of like the forefather of the Zimbabwean liberation movement, and Robert Mugabe, who ultimately anyone who knows about Zim probably knows about him.
I think anyone who doesn't even know about Zim knows about him. Robert Mugabe was an influential figure.
So, how did this happen? So Joshua Nkomo was actually at the forefront of this movement for years and years. But the problem with Joshua Nkomo, it's not a problem, but people. The issue with Joshua Nkomo was that he was in Ndebele.
Oh, okay.
And Ndebele people are sort of a minority in Zimbabwe, almost like, I'd say 20% of the black population are Ndebele. And so Robert Mugabe, being kind of smart, first of all, what he did was that he navigated the politics within the Shona groupings. And so it was a whole Game of Thrones. That's a whole story
House
of how
he did that. My guy was on it.
Because initially, a lot of these guys were like military people and, very, strongman type of guys. Whereas Robert Mugabe was like a nerdy, bookie guy with a fancy accent.
Was he educated outside of Zimbabwe? Did he go and travel?
Yeah, well, no, he was educated in Zimbabwe, and then he went to teach in Ghana. And because Ghana was the first African country to be independent, that sort of stirred something within him.
Thinking in him.
And so that's where he studied Marxism and all of that. And so he came back to Zimbabwe and started being involved in all of the politics. And so all of these guys were sent to prison for for long periods of time. And so what happens is that the tensions between the blacks and the whites sort of start filtering into conflict. And so a war kicks off.
Have our own civil war.
Yeah. So it was a civil war. To the rest of the world, it was a civil war, but to the black Zimbabweans, it was a liberation war.
Yeah.
Because it's basically the blacks fighting against the whites, the communist-backed blacks fighting against the whites. Now, if you can remember, this Rhodesian army is like
stacked.
These
cannons,
are badasses, bro.
Guns.
Like these guys are like, and because they used to go and help the British Empire fight in like Malaysia. So a lot of them have war experience. Ian Smith was a World War II pilot.
Wow.
In fact, if you see his pictures, he had a bit of a stoop on his face because his plane was shot down by the Nazis in the North African campaign. So a lot of these guys are like, proper military guys.
They're war torn, they're battle experience.
Yeah. And so the Shona faction, which Robert Mugabe was leading, was influenced mostly by the Chinese type of communism. And so they favored...
What's the difference, the Chinese
type so the Chinese and the Soviets kind of followed a bit of a different style. The Chinese were more... The communists in China won their civil war through the peasants, like rural, using the peasants, using the rural population to help the guerrilla warfare. So it's like sort of like a guerrilla insurgency funded through, you change the mindset of the people in the rural areas. And to this day,
fight up and rise up for you. Because Xi Jinping was a rural, or was he rural-ish?
Yeah,
I know he got sent over to the rural
that's
area.
That's it. But it's a very, that was the whole Chinese Communist Party thing, use the rural proletariat, whereas the Ndebele side was more Soviet influenced, where it was more conventional warfare, more like intellectual communism. But because of the masses, the numbers on the Shona side, ultimately it was ZANU-PF or Robert Mugabe's side which would have the most numbers, the most support,
Yeah.
And so that war kind of dragged on for a very long time.
Would some of our grandparents have been in that war?
So a lot of the people who are in charge of Zim now are war veterans of that war, but I think our grandparents would have been old enough to be involved, if at all they would have wanted to,
Which is... So for the boys. Just giving land to your mates.
And
I'm seeing history repeat itself so much in this conversation.
So many times. Because you see Rhodes was giving land to his mates. And so Robert Mugabe kind of does the same. And now he is super paranoid, pulls out of the Commonwealth, pulls out of, a lot of world economic bodies. He's just giving the middle finger to the whole world,
He's becoming an isolationist.
Yeah, typical dictator behavior. He's just like, it's just us versus everyone else. And the country is suffering as a result. And so what happens is ZANU-PF then loses their own republics and all. And the British were quite keen on leaving them alone until gold and diamonds were discovered. Now, these are probably the most impressive gold deposits in the world that are in South Africa. And so the British said, look, we can take this over, right?
Yeah, this can be ours. Let's make some money here.
And
always comes down to money, right?
Long story short, there were like 2 wars, and so the British annexed the Dutch territories, and the unified territory then became South Africa. Now, the person who benefited most from that whole gold and diamond rush in South Africa was someone called Cecil Rhodes.
Yeah.
So Cecil Rhodes was a British guy from a relatively wealthy family who, due to his illnesses and sick condition, was sent to South Africa to, get the warmer climate. And so he and his brother got into like the gold trade, diamonds and stuff. And they were lucky. They struck gold and started a company
Literally struck gold.
Yeah. So this guy was super wealthy. He was like a celebrity. He was basically Elon Musk of his time. Yeah.
Surprising that they were both in South Africa.
Yeah. Elon Musk. Yeah, fair enough. And so by that time, the British, because of the 2 wars against the Boers, like these were quite serious wars. They fought the Zulus and they fought the Boers. So the British public was kind of war weary. And around that time, there was the tensions with Germany and what would become World War I. So people didn't really want to have any colony or expand further north after South Africa. And so Rhodes, of course, wanting to expand his mining interests, looked to Zimbabwe and said, look, hey, there actually might be something to do here.
Yeah, there might be more mines.
Yeah, there might be more mines. And so what he did was that he went to the British government and said, look, you guys, there's no passion for more colonization. I can do this with my own money.
Yeah.
But I will just dedicate it to the crown. So this territory will be mine, but it'll be part of the greater British Empire. Let's strike a deal. Yeah. This is for Queen and country, but I'll fund this with my own money because he could afford to do it.
Wow. That's actually crazy, no?
Yeah.
He could afford to take over a country.
Yeah.
By his own riches.
And so Queen Victoria said, yeah, okay, you know what? Fair enough.
It's all right. Just bring me more diamonds to add to my crown. And
diamonds to the crown.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. So Rhodes literally got his homies, his buddies, it's a ragtag of like businessmen and henchmen and guys, and said, guys, let's go into what was Zimbabwe. And so he sort of struck a deal with the Ndebele king at the time, because if you strike a deal with the Ndebele king, because he's ruling Zimbabwe, you're sort of
all right. Yeah.
And so what he went to him and said was, look, I just want mining concessions. You guys aren't really doing much with this gold anyway. I know what you're doing with gold, so just give me the right to mine the gold, and then maybe I'll give you some taxes and stuff. But he basically swindled the king. into signing this concession. And so by the time the king realized what was happening, it was a bit too late, because this guy, so-called minor, is now coming in with guns and cannons and,
Yeah,
advanced
wow.
weaponry.
You're screwed then at that point.
Yeah. So that's the one thing a lot of people misunderstand. Zimbabwe wasn't colonized by the British per se. It was colonized by what was called the British South Africa Company, which was Rhodes's company.
Which was Rhodes's company, yeah.
So that is why it was then called Rhodesia, because it was technically his venture.
He named it that.
Yeah. And so Rhodes didn't actually live long after that. His illnesses caught up to him and he died. And until about after the First World War, Zimbabwe was effectively managed by the company. But after the First World War, Britain then took over the holdings and said, look, you know what? So they basically took over the territory. And
there's too much money coming from it.
Yeah.
Like, we've just been through a world war. We need some cash.
They need some cash, yeah.
We need to rebuild. Africa. Let's come to you. Come on, Zimbabwe.
So now we get into the mathematics and the economy of Rhodesia. So unfortunately for Rhodes and his people, when they got into Zimbabwe, they actually didn't find as much gold as they thought they would find in South Africa. Now, Zimbabwe actually has a lot of gold, a lot of platinum, a lot of minerals, but it wasn't as profitable as South Africa. What Zimbabwe had was very good arable land, like the best farmland in that area. And luckily for them, Zimbabwe was basically the furthest north you could get into Africa with horses before they succumbed to what was called the tsetse fly back then. So they didn't really have any technology before that to get your horses further up into Africa. Officially, or they don't lose, but basically everyone knows they lost like successive elections. I think from 2002 until 2008.
Wow.
They would pretty much lose an election and then they would say, you know what?
Fake news.
We didn't lose it.
Didn't happen. Don't know what you're on about.
Because this whole time, before the opposition rose, Robert Mugabe was capturing like the army, the judiciary, legislature.
He was on his dictatorship.
Yeah. And so all the people who are supposed to essentially defend the vote are like, yeah, you know what? So if the army is partisan, if the judges are partisan, they're not going to defend that vote.
No.
And so that's another strike. Like, okay, you guys aren't even respecting elections anymore. And so the sanctions just kept on increasing.
Democracy, the free world does not like that when you do that.
No. And all of this spiraled right up until 2008 when everything comes tumbling down. I mean,
Wall Street crash.
Tumbling down.
Yeah.
All the people that know about the hyperinflation era of Zimbabwe, the wads of cash, the trillion
notes.
All of that was a culmination of Robert Mugabe just isolating himself and saying, I'm going to burn with this house. This is just,
I'm going to die with this.
And so it reaches a head where, so the election in that year, they lost so badly that initially they refused to accept it, but they said, okay, you know what?
Couldn't be ignored.
We can't really ignore this. So what we're going to do is to form a unity government, like an inclusive government. We're not going to give you the power. Hell no.
Sort of like a coalition government.
A coalition government.
Yeah. Okay.
So they lost so badly, like they had to. South Africa stepped in and said, guys, come on. Look, you can't.
What are we doing here? Like, come on, like, guys.
South Africa had to step in. And so that coalition government actually stabilized things because there was sort of respect for rule of law, respect for the economy.
Yeah.
And for those years, Zimbabwe then bounced back, became the Zimbabwe that everyone knew. But, again, Robert Mugabe reverted to his cronyism.
Yeah.
And in the next election, again, they did what they did and got back into power. But by this time, he was aging and, his wife was starting to become a lot more powerful.
Yeah.
And so all the old military guard and Robert Mugabe's people were like, we can't really have his wife take over.
Why? Because she's a woman or?
Yeah, because she's a woman, but also she's just not really been involved in running the country or whatever, you know.
Grace, is it
And
Grace?
so Grace was actually his second wife.
Yeah.
She was, his previous wife was Ghanaian, had passed away in the 80s. Like, people kind of loved her because she was, she was pretty chilled. Whereas Grace was like the face of extravagant spending. Like, she used to come to London and shut down Harrods just so she could shop. They called her Gucci Grace. She'd go
Gucci
to France.
Grace?
Yeah, bro. Because these people are like swimming in wealth. His kids had penthouses in Singapore, Dubai, all of that. So it was now too much. And so these people got together and had a coup. Now, a coup is crazy because we associate coups with like unstable countries and like Northwest Africa and the Sahel
Haiti,
and Haiti or Syria or whatever.
A lot of those backed by
America. So this happening in Zimbabwe just shows you how the institutions of democracy had been violated, and but still people were like overjoyed. There was like an outpouring. Literally the biggest party I've seen in my entire life.
Really?
Everyone just poured out into the streets, black, white, Shona and Devele.
Wow.
Because people were like, yo, Bob is gone, bro. Yeah. He's gone.
Bob, big man Bob.
So people were like jumping onto the tanks as they went into the city. And it was a great time. It was a great time. But
there's always a but. Nothing lasts forever, guys. Nothing lasts forever.
We should have known that this was just, there's no honor among thieves. No. This was just a feud between people of the same
ilk.
Yeah. As Jesus says, you can't put new wine in old wineskins. So it was, back to regularly scheduled programming.
Everyone, you can party for a bit, feel like you're gonna have a bit of hope, and then we'll just continue on.
So that comes to where we are to this day, where it's pretty much still ZANU-PF, and now the opposition party has been, decimated through threats and violence and intimidation. So I can comfortably say Zimbabwe is back to being a one-party state now. Sadly, we're pretty much a one-party state with a toothless.
So when we have ad breaks.
Sponsors. Join us. Yeah.
Join the pod. I guess in terms of about hearing more about Zimbabwe, it's also just really sad. I don't know.
Sad,
it's a bit of both. It's like the fact is that we started off talking about what Zimbabwe means, like why it's called Zimbabwe, and the fact is that we had structures that were built that were beyond their time. Like
it's a cycle. You see, now that you say that, it's like a cycle, right? Because there were actually these ruins which were magnificent, and then they fell away, and now the country is essentially the same thing. Just ruins that have just,
Yeah. Damn. Yeah. Jeez. I didn't even think.
Now that you say
a roundabout way, but yeah, it's just crazy because it started off well, and imagine like Egypt. I mean, to be fair, Egypt. I don't know much about Egypt, but I also assume it's not amazing. Obviously, they got the pyramids. Pyramids are nice.
Things aren't really good for the average Egyptian.
But I guess for Zimbabwe, it is sad because I think I want to blame the British. I want to blame Cecil Rhodes. I want to blame colonialization for it. And I think they definitely had a role to play in it.
I would say it's definitely 50-50.
Yeah. But as you said, there was that other 50%, whereas actually our own leaders failed us.
The problem is people want to either take one extreme or the other to say, no, even though we got colonized, it's ZANU-PF's fault, and the other side will say, it's only the white people's fault. I think the truth is...
It lies in the middle. It lies in that murky truth. Yeah. And I guess you can't really ever... and trying to explain that is hard. It's much easier to say one or the other.
Yeah.
But I think something we mentioned on a podcast ages that Africa has so much potential. In Zimbabwe in itself as a country has so much potential, but it's our leaders that have failed the people of Zimbabwe.
Mm.
And I understand why my parents moved to the UK. I mean, I don't know what my life would have looked like if I'd stayed in Zimbabwe. Part of me wishes I had stayed maybe for a bit longer, so I maybe had a bit of memories, and I guess so my Shona was a bit more developed and I had a bit more of that understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing stopping me from learning Shona now as an adult.
You don't think it's too late?
I don't know.
Can you do it? Give it a shot. Let's
Give
see.
it a shot. I might as well try it.
Yeah, why not?
I want to try for my kids more than anything because I'd want them to be able to know their language.
Okay.
I'll keep the food alive.
Keep the food alive. Keep that. Yeah.
Yeah, but
try that. Try that.
Maybe not the drinking. Every now and then.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
But yeah, I don't know what my life would have looked like. But I feel very much British and Zimbabwean. And I think when I learned more about the history of Britain, it made me a lot more angry at Britain. But then hearing the history of Zimbabwe makes me a bit more sad for Zimbabwe.
It's a really sad story.
Country. Yeah, it's a really sad story because there's highs and there's lows.
Yeah.
And there's moments of there's pivot points, right? And you'll never know how history ended up happening. Only in terms of what's been told and who the victor was, who writes it, basically.
Yeah, the victor writes history.
Because Mugabe could have made different choices. And it could have been a Zimbabwe in which you and me would still be living there right now.
Is that you either die and be a hero or live long enough to see yourself
the villain.
Yeah, that's what he did, Batman basically. Yeah.
So I think it's sort of saddening. As overall, I don't think I've got more words to say on it. I wish it was better.
Yeah. And the thing is, even now, right, you look at it and you say the outlook, like what's gonna change, who's gonna make a difference as it stands, it doesn't really look good. Like,
all the young people are leaving. There's a brain drain.
The young people are leaving. There's a brain drain. Really disorganized opposition. The best you could hope for is some kind of internal reform within the party, like what happened in China, where, they were a one-party state, but when that sort of figure had died, the guy who came in was like, yo, we need to change this because we can't continue like this.
I mean, and look at them now.
So, because I think, in the end, the politics, as much as politics matter, people just want to eat, bro.
Yeah.
I don't think people in Zim would have cared about a one-party state if things were going okay.
Things were going okay, yeah.
Fine, it'd be nice to have some freedom of speech, but I'm eating good,
I guess, and that's China to a certain extent, isn't it?
That's the contract that they have with the people. As long as...
Hey guys, so I just wanted to... So hey guys, thank you for watching this episode. Now, if it might seem a bit abrupt, that's because it is. Basically, I don't know what's happening with my camera lately, but it's not really recording everything that I'm doing. Like, hey guys, so thank you for listening to this episode of the Black and Raw podcast. If it seems a bit abrupt, that's because it is. I don't know what is happening with my camera. Some things are recording, some things are not fully recording. It's a bit frustrating, but in the aim of trying to keep consistent, and it's Black History Month, so I really wanted to sort of start this on that bat. But I don't know what's happening. But it was really good to talk to Taku, and I thought even if we haven't got the whole thing out, at least we've got some of it out, because I think what's really important is some understanding of that Zimbabwean history, especially for myself, especially for those that might be Zimbabwean watching this. But some of the rest of the episode sort of talks about British history, British Black history, and what that looks like and how that relates with Zimbabwean history, but just sort of understanding yourself a bit better. I probably will do sort of just like a mini episode of me talking about Black British history and sort of the links between that and what that means. So I'll let you guys know when that's on the channel, but I really appreciate you watching this. Sorry for the inconvenience, but sometimes you can't help it, can you? But yeah, thanks.